Thanks very much. I am delighted to be here. It is an honor to be on hand to celebrate your accomplishments and those of this extraordinary university. First of all, my heartiest congratulations to all of the graduates and a special salute to the parents, grandparents, friends, and family members who have made today possible. I have had the good fortune to be on hand for a good number of commencements. This is like the most fun I've ever had. I mean, you've got the arch, you've got the procession, you've got the flags, you've got the bagpipes. You guys do pomp and circumstance like nobody else I've ever seen. Congratulations. I always admire a college that knows how to graduate. This is great. I also obviously have a lot of admiration for Buena Vista for other reasons, one of which is its extraordinary inclusion and its innovation. Students here come literally from all over the world, as evidenced by the flags you saw, and of course all over Iowa. There are students who arrive fresh from high school, others from community college, and still other adult learners who decided this was exactly the right place to renew their education. And that is a refreshing mix of talent and perspective. Of course, this is also a nationally recognized leader in innovation, freely embracing change and technology, and you should take great pride in that. And with today's commencement, the graduates here are set to unleash your talents in a vibrant and fast-paced world, and I so envy you. I've had the opportunity to talk to a few graduates here today, and I was impressed by how committed you are to a profession, how you know pretty much exactly what you want to do and hope your life will unfold. I have to admit that was not my situation at the University of Illinois College of Law. I had a great love of journalism and appreciation of law, and I was thinking, which way do you go? Which one do you make more money at? Which is going to be more rewarding? And then I had this golden opportunity, a chance to actually try out my hand as a lawyer. In the state of Illinois at that time, you were welcome as a third-year student to volunteer your services at a public defender's office, and the program allowed me to take on cases, defend criminal defendants, interview witnesses, go into a courtroom, and actually try to get somebody set free and establish their innocence while a lawyer would sit behind me and worry a great deal. I have to tell you, after a year in that program, I had a perfect record. Everyone I defended went to jail. That didn't leave me with a lot of options. What I was going to do, put an ad in the Yellow Pages saying, "Are you guilty? Do you feel really bad about it? Would you like to see justice done? Contact Ken Paulson." And so, journalism it was. And sometimes life does give you a nudge in exactly the right direction. As it turns out, journalism turned out to be a very good fit for me. I had the opportunity to be the editor of USA Today and 4 other newspapers, and interviewed everybody from President Reagan and President Carter to Little Richard and Fidel Castro. That is quite a range, and just makes journalism such a rewarding experience. What that experience taught me, though, is that education provides an invaluable foundation, but that your passion, your personal passion, can also end up leading you to endless possibilities. I am often asked, especially when I'm on a college campus, was there one figure in American journalism who inspired you so much you said, that's what I've got to do for a living? Perhaps Joseph Pulitzer, perhaps Edward R. Murrow. The truth I'm ashamed and embarrassed to tell you is Superman. Yeah, Superman. I loved the TV show, and I enjoyed the comic books. And after all, who was Superman when he wasn't leaping tall buildings in a single bound? He was Clark Kent, a mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper, who, by the way, helped fight a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. And I knew I was never going to be Superman, but I thought I might pull off that mild-mannered reporter thing. So I was the only young man in America whose pulse quickened when Clark Kent came on the television screen. But isn't that always the way? You've got your Clark Kent moment. You've got your popular culture movement, whether it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that inspired you in some odd and unusual way, or you had a chemistry kit that you said, I want to be a scientist, or you had a Lego set that may lead you to construct buildings for a living. It's truly remarkable how each of our personal and early experiences shape who we become for the rest of our careers and lives. And that also applies to generations. I am obviously a baby boomer. I've got some good company here. Some of you are members of generations X, Y, or Z, and a good number of you are what they call millennials. But I have to tell you, those labels never strike me as meaningful as what was going on while you were growing up. And in my case, and this will date me in a serious way, I was 2 years old when Elvis Presley showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show. Changed everything. I didn't watch, but it changed everything. It changed my life and the lives of every member of my generation. The advent of rock and roll changed music, changed fashion, and fueled a youth culture, and arguably set the stage for the generation gap that would affect so much of American politics and potentially our foreign policy. And if Elvis had not been enough to create the rock and roll generation, we all got a booster shot in 1964 when the Beatles came to America. We were the rock and roll generation, and contemporary music has played a huge part in our lives ever since. I'm sure music is important to many of you in this room, but you are a distinctly different generation. When you were two, they were inventing the World Wide Web. I know the internet is now as familiar to you as running water and electric lights, but the world was a dramatically different place before 1993. And then they invented something called the Mosaic browser that tamed the arcane internet and allowed people to access news and information in a way never done before. And it changed everything for your generation. It was mentioned in that gracious introduction that I was one of the pioneers of online journalism, which meant that I had to find a partner. There was no web, and so I reached out to a company called CompuServe. In those early days, there was CompuServe and Prodigy and something brand new called America Online, and I partnered with them to put a newspaper online in 1993, and it was pretty primitive. I remember a breathless publication, a trade publication called Editor and Publisher, saying that I developed this program that, imagine this, you could sit down at your computer. I was operating out of Kennedy Space Center at the time, and you could press a button and a picture of that morning's launch would come onto your screen that same day. They were breathless. And now to be very, very accurate, we didn't have digital modems in those days. We had something called a 2400 baud modem. Some of you are laughing because you remember those days. And you would press the button to download the photograph, and then you would leave the room. And then you would have children. And shortly after that, the picture would come up on the screen. And we thought that was blazing fast. Now, if you're a slightly older graduate, maybe you left for a while and have come back to school, you actually may remember going on the web the first time, maybe 10 or 11 years old, and your parents were right behind you, standing there over your shoulder because they wanted to know exactly what was going on. Collectively, you are the web generation, just as we were the rock and roll generation. And that means you have experienced the world in a way that no previous generation ever has. All of your lives, you've had information available at the touch of a keyboard. News, information, and entertainment have always been on 24/7. That has been a huge plus throughout your lives, but can also potentially make you a very special generation. Now, it's customary for a commencement speaker to say, ladies and gentlemen, you are about to change the world. There's no need for that. You have already changed the world. You changed the world when you decided that free was the very best price for anything. That means YouTube is flourishing, but also means that illegal downloading has taken its toll on the recording industry. You changed the world when you decided the most efficient way to communicate with others was with your thumbs, and that traditional spelling would only slow you down. You changed the world with your early adoption of MySpace, Facebook, and social networking, bringing new meaning to the word community. This is a generation that has changed the way the entire nation looks at media, information, and communication. But here's what truly sets you apart. You place a special value on immediacy, and you want to be in touch all the time. In touch with your friends, in touch with your community, in touch with your world. You understand the value of that community. You understand that there are sometimes inaccurate posts on Twitter, but you also recognize that the voices of many can collectively lead to the truth. You see your neighborhood as much more than the house and houses on your block, and you value the news and views of people you've never met who may be a world away, literally half a world away. Global communication is second nature for the web generation. So now we come to the heart of every commencement speech. We've established that you're pretty special. And then comes the question, what are you going to do about that? And let me suggest that a largely unprecedented path of progress can come from your generation. If you couple extraordinary digital and social media and those skills with the principles that were forged by the very first generation of Americans. You've seen headlines in the past few weeks about the Internal Revenue Service not exactly playing on an equal level with different political groups. You've also seen news that the Associated Press has had their phone records monitored. Now, no matter where you stand on these issues, it's important to know that those controversies harken back to the birth of this country and a moment in American history that too few of us know about. And if you bear with me for just a minute, I want to share with you a story that was missing from your otherwise comprehensive education. You know, it's easy to forget that our current form of government started on the run. Somebody shot at somebody else at Lexington and Concord, and we had to invent a government. And we did. It was very laid back. It was called the Articles of Confederation, and it was not a very strong or powerful one. And this country in the 1780s was in trouble. Our economy was in shambles. There had been people who had fought in the Revolutionary War who had not been paid properly. There were rebellions and real concern about the stability of this nation. And so the Federalists said, we have a plan. Well, we're going to have an executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch, and we're going to put this in a blueprint called the U.S. Constitution. And all you have to do is ratify this Constitution, and we will reboot America. Well, they didn't exactly use that phrase, but that's the concept. Same principles, an updated operating system, destined to be rolled out in 1789. They were going to reboot America, retain our principles, but build on that. And here's what you never learned in the fourth grade. When they took the Constitution to the American people and said, here it is, let's go, the American people said, no, thank you. We do not want a strong and powerful central government. We had one of those called a king. Didn't work out for us. No, thank you. What you never heard in the fourth grade is the American people rejected one of our most cherished documents. Over time, we had to come to a solution. Unlike today, where there's so much polarity, we actually had to come together and set our differences apart to reinvent America. And we did that through discussion, debate, and exploration. The American people came back to the Founding Fathers and said, here's the deal. We'll give you the power you seek, but you've got to give us something in exchange. You've got to promise us you won't put soldiers in our home in peacetime. You won't subject us to unreasonable search and seizure. If we get accused of a jury trial, if we get accused of a crime, we get a jury trial with a competent lawyer, competent defense. They also said we reserve the right to bear arms, and most important, we demand the right to worship the God of our choice, to say whatever we want. If we're not happy with the way things are going, we petition government for change, and if we're really unhappy, we can gather in the town square and raise our voices and protest, and you may not shoot us. No more Boston massacres. And one more thing, we have no idea who you're going to put in the top office as president. It could be George Washington for all we know. But we don't trust anybody with that much power. We demand a free press to keep an eye on people in power and make sure there is no abuse of our rights. If you do that, we will give you the power you seek. And I have to tell you today that my biggest surprise in law school, my biggest surprise in law school was graduating. That stunned me and everyone I know. But my greatest surprise in law school in terms of the curriculum was contract law, which sounded deadly dull to me, but turns out to be the summary of the relationships throughout society. You know, life's messy. You have a significant other in your life, and you sort of think you know where you stand, but you're never quite sure. You have a job, you get an evaluation once a year. So often you're left to wonder where you stand. But you buy a car and stop paying for it. The contract says the car goes back. You buy a DVD player from a department store, and it doesn't work. The contract on the back of that receipt says you can bring it back. What happened in America in this pivotal moment in the late 1780s was a contract between the American people and the government. In exchange for the power of the government, we fought for, demanded, and received the power of the people embodied in the Bill of Rights. And as you know from your own experiences, unless both parties uphold their end of the deal, the contract is null and void. Unless we daily cherish and protect these freedoms, the kind of nation we aspire to be, one founded on principles of justice and liberty for all, that runs the risk of becoming null and void. We do these founding principles an injustice when we think of them as part of a dusty document, a footnote to history, or something we read about in the 4th grade and set aside.